Greetings and salutations, and welcome to Rotted Recap. I know that I typically do spoiler-free movie reviews, but today I'd like to do something a little bit different in this segment, where I actually take a closer, more visceral look at a particular movie, really get into the guts of it, and discuss it with you. So please, join me on this journey, a journey to a castle. A William Castle. Our story begins in 1914. You see, in the year 1914 in New York City, a new soul entered this world by the name of William Schloss Jr., later to be known as the iconic director William Castle. The notorious godfather at gimmicks, William Castle started out with more humble beginnings, losing his mother and father by the age of 11 and leaving high school to pursue theater work by the age of 15. Eventually working on motion pictures, he made his way up the ranks until finally he was directing his own movie and adding his own signature flair to the industry. You see, Castle attempted to make the theater-going experience one of interaction and glee. With the release of 𝗘𝗾𝗶𝗽𝗺 in 1958, audiences didn't just get their movie ticket, they also got a $1,000 life insurance policy guarantee should they die of fright while watching the movie. He even stationed real nurses and ambulances in the lobby and on standby to add just that little bit of flourish to the screenings. With the release of The Tingler in 1959, he had crews go out from theater to theater, putting vibrating motors underneath random seats to buzz every time an iconic scene happened. He called this technology Percepto. He was a big fan of the gimmicks, as evidenced by the 1960 release of 13 Ghosts, in which he employed Illusiono. This is where moviegoers got a special pair of glasses with red on the top and blue on the bottom, and depending on whether or not they actually wanted to see the ghosts in the movie, they could watch through one lens or the other. And then there was Emergo, coming alongside his 1959 release of the Vincent Price classic House on Haunted Hill. Emergo was nothing more than a plastic skeleton that would rise out and hover above the audience to coincide with a particular scene in the movie, but audiences loved it and they were thrilled by it. Sometimes cheap tricks and gimmicks can still get an audience smiling, and William Castle knew that. In 1999, 22 years after William Castle passed away, Dark Castle Entertainment was formed by Joel Silver, Robert Zemeckis, and Gilbert Adler. The initial goal of this was to bring forth and remake the William Castle films of old, bringing them up to date for modern audiences, and that's exactly what they did. Until they didn't. You see, this was a pretty grand experiment, and it really only lasted for 2 movies that, while they were commercial successes, they weren't really big box office hits. They made their money back, but only just. And the first of these 2 motion pictures that remade the William Castle legacy was the 1999 release of House on Haunted Hill. So let's dig into the bloody guts of this iconic remake, go over it scene by scene, give a few soft glances at how it touches on the original, and explore why I think it's one of the greatest horror movies to come out of the 1990s. The movie starts out showing us the house as it stood in 1931 when it was a mental institution headed by the deranged Richard B. Vonnegut, played by Jeffrey Combs. As the good doctor is Vonnegut-cutting into a patient, seemingly without any anesthesia and being filmed by attending nurses, a patient revolt breaks out, culminating in a fire. Or so the story goes, as told by Peter Graves, as the camera pans out to reveal the narrative told in a terrifying but true cheese factory show. As it happens, this particular show is being watched by none other than Evelyn Price, who has the brilliant idea to rent the house for her birthday party, and she calls her husband, Stephen Price, to regale him with the splendid birthday plans. No love lost between the two, he admonishes her for the fucked up idea as well as happily agrees to it, seeing an opportunity to fuck with her and replace her guest list with a list of his own. Unbeknownst to either of them, something mysterious happens, and a third revision of the list gets crafted by an unseen hand. Cut to the first real nod to the original 1959 film, as a group of black cars led by a hearse follows a winding road, and we get a glimpse of each passenger in turn. They're reading their invitations, which goes on to explain that $1 million is awaiting them should they survive the night. At the end of the drive, the cars stop and are met by the current house owner, Watson Pritchett, played by Chris Kattan.
Good.
So, is this dump really haunted?
It's pretty scary.
After a brief back and forth where he explains that the rest of the driveway is out, he escorts them the rest of the way to the house and lets them in. Almost immediately, shit starts going down as a glass art piece on the ceiling breaks, shattering and falling amongst the crowd, then reveals a very nonplussed Stephen Price, played by Jeffrey Rush, doing a masterful channeling of Vincent Price and John Waters. A brief interlude then follows as Stephen and Evelyn go to have a private conversation, and that's where we get the full breadth of the animosity between the two, each of them wanting to be rid of the other, but neither willing to financially flinch, leading to some of the most thinly veiled threats imaginable. Stephen wanders downstairs to greet the guests, and then reveals he has no idea who any of them are, and assumes that this one time Evelyn got the better of him, beating him at one aspect of this game that he's crafted. Even so, he details the fact that there are 5 checks made out to cash for $1 million each to be divided among those who survive the night.
But look at the bright side. If there's only one of you still upright at dawn, you'll be leaving here with $5 million in your pocket.
This is crazy.
At this point, we have a moment of real horror film mastery coming from Corky Romano. So, here's the deal with that. I often say in my channel that one of the best things that a movie can do is show, don't tell. Too often movies go through lazy dialogue choices to provide explanation between characters what's going on, and thereby telling the audience what's happening, instead of showing it as the visual medium would imply is the best way. At the end of the day, a horror movie at face value excels at storytelling, and the way in which a story can unfold impacts the experience for the audience. So if you've ever heard me say that, but you're kind of wondering, well, what's an example of it? Right here is one of the best examples I can think of a movie that does show, don't tell. Right now, at this stage in the movie, there's a whole lot of questions that are unanswered. How dangerous is this house? What kind of spook factors are in play here? How much reach does it have? Is it at the threshold of the doorway or further?
You gonna come in?
No, I'm good.
Things like that. Are the guests involved just going to be kind of frightened, or are they in mortal danger of being eviscerated, disemboweled, and just torn apart? This is information that we don't currently have, and neither do the other characters. At this point, they just think that they are the guests for this wild birthday party that they don't really know what's going to be happening. There's a lot of questions up in the air for them, but mortal danger is not really an element in play for them. Otherwise, they wouldn't have stepped into the door. Except for Chris Kattan playing Watson Pritchett. The information that he has is different than the rest. He knows just how dangerous this house is. He has the information. Now, how do we actually get that information out to the audience? A lazy writing would have him try to tell the people, this house is dangerous, there's the stuff going on here, you're not going to survive, you shouldn't step through the door. That would be tell, don't show. Instead, we get a scene in which Stephen Price is laying out these cashier checks, and Watson Pritchett is being very impatient. Hey, you're renting the house, I'd like to go, where's my money? Give me my money now. And the longer that Stephen Price toys with him, the more visibly upset Watson Pritchett gets. He wants out of this place immediately.
Anybody who's not comfortable with the rules, you're free to walk anytime. 7 digits poorer goes without saying.
I'm ready. I'll walk now.
And by showing how scared he is to be in there 1 second longer than he absolutely needs to be, and having that information discrepancy between the characters, shows us all we need to see.
That's it. I'm sorry to interrupt her. God damn it! You give me my goddamn check right now! Because I want it. So you give it!
I'm sorry, Pritchett.
We see through the general attitude and behavior of Watson Pritchett just how dangerous things are. Even going to the point where Geoffrey Rush invites him to be a part of the group.
I think you're gonna miss the bash of a lifetime.
My loss.
Even if I give you $1 million as well.
I wouldn't know what to do with it all. Thank you.
He just wants out, and not even $1 million could get him to stay 1 second longer than he desires. This is an example of show, don't tell. We are now being delivered the information about this house that is crucially necessary for instilling the right manner of dread and fear. Not only that, but while we're getting that information, the other characters are also getting that information. They are seeing somebody that has intimate knowledge of this house reacting in a way where he fucking doesn't care about $1 million. He just wants to be gone. And that definitely raises some eyebrows. Now we have some information transfer and things are getting interesting. All right, brief interlude over. Let's get back to the story. Once Pritchett does have his check, but before he could leave, a series of gears and mechanisms spring to life, and metal shutters start clanging down on the exterior windows and doors. All of them trapped, Pritchett has now given up any facade of pleasantness, and is more than willing to be fully forthright about their collective impending death.
I lied. The house is alive. We're all gonna die.
After the group decides it's time to scout the house for the release mechanism for this whole lockdown apparatus, Price intervenes momentarily to reveal one last trick up his sleeve: a loaded gun for each guest with a magazine welded in place. Pritchett takes them to the lower levels of the house where all the actual medical treatments and fucked up shit actually occurred. They bumble around in the dark for a while, getting to know each of the rooms that will eventually become fun little moments down the line. Grotesque glass case figurines, electroshock, administrative offices, and the whirligig of insanity/death. You gotta love a movie that's just willing to throw in the death whirligigs. I think for me, this is one of the grander examples of how it calls back to the gimmicky fun of William Castle, how it's not afraid to go to that level and just have a little bit of absurdity for the audience. Sarah and Eddie, played by Ali Larter and Taye Diggs respectively, branch out on their own and in the meantime get to know one another. Sarah reveals that she is not the one that was actually invited, but rather the invited lady's abused employee that saw an opportunity for $1 million and took her shot. So she conveniently forgot the invite and instead showed up in her boss's place. Once they get separated from each other, Sarah soon comes across Eddie acting strangely. She follows him until he steps up to the edge of a large vat and then takes a bloodbath. And beyond. Reaching inside to save him, she's panicking until finally Eddie's voice rings out from the doorway, asking, "What are you doing?" Even so, when they return to the Great Hall and report what happens, Pritchett informs them that that is far from the worst thing that this house has in store for them. We then show that one of the guests, Melissa Marr, played by Bridget Wilson, is still down in the lower levels alone, wandering around with a camcorder. A once-upon-a-time member of Hollywood, she's hoping to get back in the good graces of media production, and is hoping that capturing this type of footage will be just the angle she needs. Unfortunately for her, she happens to come across a surgery in progress in one of the most effective perspective scares of the decade. Once the group comes across Melissa's camera on the ground and an impossible trail of blood leading seemingly into the walls of the house, they set off to inspect some footage. Sarah wants to see the footage on the camera, while Price ducks away to his secret surveillance room and looks at the monitors he set up in advance. What he doesn't expect is an uninvited guest dressed as a doctor and moving rather oddly. A brief interlude later, the electrical in the building starts going all higgledy-piggledy on everyone, and it dawns on Pritchett to check the electroshock therapy room. Therein, they find Evelyn strapped to a table and receiving a few 100,000 volts of electric goodness. Price accuses everybody and anybody in the room of killing her, only knowing that 1, he didn't do it, and 2, one of them must be in cahoots with this random doctor that he saw on his monitors. Several accusations and a brief struggle later, and the enthusiastic gun-waving Price is subdued and placed into the whirligig of insanity/death, effectively functioning as a holding cell. At this point, Dr. Blackburn, played by Peter Gallagher, tells the rest of the folks he'll go ahead and watch after Price if they want to grab a Coke and a smile. Once he's alone, Dr. Blackburn gets a sinister gleam in his eyes, and after taunting Price, he starts the machine up and leaves. Inside the machine, Price trips balls, and we get shown some very cool imagery that truly highlights some of the depraved and creative energy imbued in the core of this film. We then pick back up with Sarah, Eddie, and Pritchett exploring the administrative offices where they uncover one of the clues to solve the mystery of the house. Of the 5 people that survived the blaze in 1931, each of this evening's guests are related to them. Each of them, they realize, except Blackburn. Funny enough, that's who we see next as he enters the electroshock room and injects a wake-em-up serum into Evelyn, who is then revived from the fake electrocution. Their grand plan is then laid out for the audience in honestly a rather far-fetched exposition, stating that she wanted to be responsible for her husband's death, but with witnesses clearly showing that she was not in any way directly culpable. So the goal was to scare them right up to the point of defending themselves with deadly force. Everything is going exactly as they wanted, except Blackburn can't account for the whereabouts of Melissa Marr. Frustrated that a wannabe investigative reporter could still be wandering the halls, Evelyn is convinced everything is about to crash down upon them and decides that everyone needs one more push in the right direction. What they need is another body, and Stephen's name written all over the kill. Evelyn gets her wish, and the remaining occupants of the house are sufficiently frightened out of their wits and on guard against Stephen Price specifically. A standoff ensues in the room with the encased grotesque figures leading up to Sarah shooting Mr. Price.
Help me. Not even for $1 million, Mr. Price.
Again, I kind of want to take just a little bit of a moment here and highlight one of my favorite things about this movie is things that it doesn't do. When they first went down into the lower levels and they got shown these grotesque figures, you just knew that they would be a part of things. You knew that they would spring to life, have some CG goodness, and start attacking people. Except they don't. They are just there for the suspenseful aspect of teasing the audience. We let our imaginations run wild with what these things could do and are thrilled by the fact that they actually don't. It's that kind of employing creative ideas and also knowing when to stay your hand that just makes things like this masterfully crafted for me. After she's taken upstairs by Eddie and Pritchett, Evelyn comes out of the shadows to gloat over the body of her dead husband, who then springs to life and in a grand display of self-satisfaction tells her,
I'm Stephen goddamn Price!
After that, a kerfuffle! Evelyn is knocked through a bricked-up wall, revealing a hidden room. Black tendrils start emanating from the walls and close in upon her. After she is grabbed and absorbed into the house, Stephen runs and tries to get upstairs, blocked by a stuck door. Hearing the pounding on the other side, Pritchett opens the door at just the wrong time and becomes the next casualty of the house. An escape sequence follows as the 3 current survivors are attempting to flee the advances of the shadowy mass that has formed and is now chasing them. At that moment, for the first time in the entire movie, somebody realizes, hey, those metal shutters came down, which means they were up. Maybe we should go up. So to the attic they go, and sure enough, there's an array of gears and levers present. Price gets one of the windows open, finally revealing daylight beyond. Once Sarah and Eddie reach the attic, they are beset upon by the shadowy entity, and Price sacrifices himself to save Sarah. As the integrity of the rope holding the shutter open is being compromised, Eddie rushes Sarah out the window, but is unable to get out himself before it snaps and closes on him. Clearly, this is the end for the last descendant of the original survivors.
No one gets out of here alive.
Mr. Baker, it's time to take your rightful place with the others.
I had nothing to do with this! I was adopted!
Okay, time out. We need to call an audible here, fellas. What's the problem? What do you mean, what's the problem? You just heard him. He's adopted. So that means at least that clearly puts us in a gray area here. Do we kill him or not? Well, just because he's adopted doesn't mean his parents didn't care for him. Well, I mean, hopefully, yeah, his parents cared for him. That's neither here nor there. This is kind of a blood thing, though. Oh, yeah, the haunted house stuff does do the blood thing, yeah. Seriously, who screwed this up? Tim? Tim, I'm looking at you. Hey man, my record said nothing about adoption. Well, I mean, clearly this is somebody's fault. I mean, I know this was a rush job, but maybe you need another 60 years to prepare properly. All right, let's stop bickering and try to figure out what the fuck we're actually gonna do here, fellas. Well, I mean, obviously we gotta let him go. Yeah, we do gotta let him go, fine, but God, the Belasco house is never gonna let us hear the end of this one. You know, I know it's only been a few minutes, but since Pritchard joined us, it really hasn't shut the fuck up. Hey, now there's an idea. Now we're actually starting to use the old noggin. Let's give a win to Pritchard and get him to shut his talk hole for the next 100 years. Yeah, so everybody in agreement? Sounds all right, Barney? All right, let's do this.
Once Eddie is safely outside, he and Sarah sit together on the ledge and find the $5 million check sitting with them. They have a chuckle, wonder aloud how they'll get down, and end credits roll. In terms of an effort to bring William Castle's energy and vision into the modern era and all the gore that entails, I think this is about as good as we could have ever hoped for. It had modern levels of gore, as well as a good balance between serious enough performances and a big ol' heaping helping of camp. Unfortunately, other moviegoers really didn't agree with that, and although it didn't bomb, it only made enough money to justify its own existence and possibly dip toes into the next entry, which was 13 Ghosts. And after that did about the same, recovering its budget but not really being a huge blockbuster. The idea of remaking Castle Pictures was brought to a close. Still, the idea was a noble one, and I honestly wish it could have lasted longer. William Castle was a man that had a vision of fun and engagement with the audience, and I think that that's something that in some way is sorely missed today. The original films of William Castle and that era will always hold a very revered place in my heart, and although I'm sad that we didn't see more, I am glad that we at least got these 2 entries. If he were able to hold down his lunch, I think that he would have liked them as well. And so we wrap up our recap video on House on Haunted Hill. Let's take a look at the raw numbers. We have 10 on-screen kills, 1 face scooped out, 3 minutes of whirligig insanity, and 5 checks with the same exact serial number, which, if it was not a mistake of the art department, implies that Stephen Price was a bit of a bastard and had no intention of actually delivering the $1 million. Was it a prop snafu, or was he just an asshole? It's anybody's pick. It could be either one. But I think that should about do it. Thank you so much for joining me here at Rotted Recap. I look forward to seeing you on my next video. Remember, next time you want to watch a horror movie, first make sure that it's good and rotted.